Welcome to the ZimmCast, a program dedicated to bringing you what's new in agricultural marketing. The ZimmCast is the official podcast of AgWired and hosted by Chuck and Cindy Zimmerman.
Hello and welcome to the ZimmCast. I'm Chuck Zimmerman. Cindy and I celebrated our 20th anniversary of ZimmComm at the Agri-Marketing Conference in Kansas City, Missouri. We got to see and talk to many of our friends and clients and talk about the old days and what we think is on the horizon. We've needed to make changes, go in different directions, and learn new skills as so much has changed, most especially just before and through the pandemic years. We're looking ahead for the future, discussing some new ideas and making some changes once again. In the meantime, I'll be on my annual retreat the end of this week and then right on to Washington, D.C. for the Future of Food and Farming, the modern celebration of ag on the National Mall, and that's working with the Association of Equipment Manufacturers, or AEM. After that, I'll be on the road to the AgGateway Mid-Year Meeting in Des Moines, Iowa. So let's dive into this episode with Carl Harker with AWIS and Scott Benson, Nitrogen Pulse. These companies are cooperating on tools for farmers to better manage their nitrogen use, and that's all tied into good weather data. You can learn more about it in our discussion. We're going to learn a little bit about what both of these companies are doing together. And I think the first thing I might want to do is, Scott, why don't you tell us a little bit about Nitrogen Pulse for those who don't know?
We started our company back in 2016. It's an outgrowth of nitrogen is generally your third largest and most important input. But the truth of the matter is the guidelines that we go by still were born in the post-World War II era. And there was a soil test that was developed. It wasn't just developed. There were components of the soil that were discovered by Dr. Mulvaney at the University of Illinois. Is a soil fertility expert, and nitrogen is his expertise area. And he discovered a relationship between a soil test that isolates an amino sugar compound and the amount of free nitrogen that is produced in your soil every year. We had an opportunity to start what we're into now. We have about 25,000 acres currently being employed. Not a single pound of nitrogen gets applied until everything is tested and recommendations are groomed through. We're not big players in the marketplace yet, I guess, but the feelings are just as strong and growing every day of the importance of what we do, because it's not just about production. It's about environmental maintenance and stewardship, too, of that important nutrient of nitrogen. To give a little segue with how I got involved with Carl, obviously nitrogen loss is a big component. It's a factor of the environment, heat and moisture. AWIS, Agricultural Weather Informational Services, I conned them into doing work up in the Corn Belt here. They literally are the straw that stirs the drink and makes everything go. That's where we are.
How about the word pulse with nitrogen? What does the pulse part of that represent?
Well, it's not in the dryland acres as you raise pulse crops. That's just as I learned that after we bought the trademark for, I believe, some other program in Florida used to own that trademark and let it go. And we were able to pick it up and go with it. The Nitrogen Pulse is a parent company. Let's say in Weather Pulse, we sell subscription-based weather information for corn production on each individual field on a field-wide basis. We literally do feel like we have our finger on the pulse of corn production. I'll talk a little about it later, but as kind of offer some proof of that, I have built a data predictive model within a 1 to 4% range can predict yield based off of the previous best performance yield in a field and the daily weather data. I had a sense of this. Not too many people talk about it. We either talk about genetics or fertility or weed and insect pressure, managing those things. And obviously we don't have much say-so in how much rainfall we get and how it's delivered. But it's so essential. Nothing goes without the understanding how the environmental pieces of that work, and it wouldn't make the prediction of 1 to 4% possible without knowing that. And again, AWIS is a major player in how that makes that engine go.
All right, Carl, how about chiming in here a bit about how you got together with Scott and what you're doing to help his model and the information for their subscribers or customers?
Well, I guess we need to start with how Scott got in touch with AWIS, and really it's from his hay production and cattle background way back it's probably been 10 years ago, Scott, I suspect, that he got in contact with using our web subscription. And then even from that, we've improved our hay production part of that and the weather forecasting and the key ingredients to getting hay in the barn, if you will, with the least amount of risk and weather impacts. But that's how the contact started. And then he took the lead on the corn production part and the nitrogen part. And it's not just nitrogen, I should say. It's more of even a year-round subscription, if you will, of using weather for your daily operations, not just saving nitrogen, making it the most effective as possible. But our program and weather platform is really for the entire season, particularly during the growing season of production. And also we estimate what the when black layer will be. And I'll let Scott kind of evolve in all that because he's kind of been the key person to develop all this stuff. And I just take what we have capability-wise with our databasing and our quality controlling of data for site-specific locations. And that's what we do primarily at AWIS. We have access to all the databases, all the weather information that's out there, the quality of it, the source of the information, how reliable it is it constantly being monitored, the quality of the data, if you will. So a lot of people take data as is without knowing the background of where the source of the data is, where it came from, the quality of the data. Does it stay maintained properly? Thus the quality of it. So that's what we do. That's a big part of what AWIS does, and that's lost in the shuffle. And that's lost in the shuffle of what gets forecast as well, because a lot of the data that's out there that's not quality sometimes gets pushed to the weather forecast models, and people don't even realize that there's some weak links there. And even with today's technology, which you think would be better, there's a lot of weak links in here that we see where they are. We try and minimize them the best possible, at least understand where the links are and address them that way. So we provide the quality input to the what we're trying to provide for these individual fields. And then Scott will take it and run and also do some marketing for the local, at least the regional. It's more of a regional thing now in Illinois, particularly northern half. But we hope to expand that with the knowledge that we gain and other insights. But I'll let him go ahead and explain where we've gone, where we're at right now, and where we hope to go in the future. AWIS provides the weather part of it and the quality of the weather inputs and understanding what those weather inputs are and deal with them if we have any issues or questions. And the customer service part of it is what's high quality in our mind, because that's where we expand and improve upon our product and with the feedback from our clients that we currently have.
So I'll jump right in. And one point that I missed that's key to what we do is our recommendations that we develop are on a variable rate basis. So one of the few things, even though variable rate technology has been around for 20 some years probably now, maybe even 30, it's never been fully qualified on what's effective and what's not when you're applying materials variable rate, especially fertility materials. Our recommendation that we generate is 93+% accurate. So if you take a recommendation, anybody's recommendation, how they generate it, pick a point in the field and subject that under testing protocols of, let's say, take your recommendation, apply 20% over recommended rate and 20% under. 93 times out of 100, ours will produce an equal to or greater than yield of the recommended rate. Nobody else can do that. When they originally started testing, it was 76%. So that meant 24% accuracy level was only attained by all other methods of producing a nitrogen recommendation. And that was the database development that occurred over 5 years at the University of Illinois. Putting it on a variable rate basis and expecting results of 93% accuracy or higher makes it critical that we understand what the environmental interaction is within a certain point of the field. It's no longer, we don't do things on a farm-wide basis. We don't do things on a field-wide basis. Every grid cell has to be accurate. And I feel that AWIS has held themselves to the same standard. I joke because people know that I'm involved in this project, and I'll get the phone calls of what the weather's going to be. And I have a lot of sympathy for Carl having to answer those questions all the time. Sometimes people think that I am the weather maker. No, I am not the weather maker. Things have to be accurate. They have to be qualified. And that's what I believe makes AWIS stand out head and shoulders above competition.
The way we communicate with the individual corn grower and the information that we're currently providing to them and how that impacts their decision making, and obviously the bushels per acre and all the model that you're developing is a key part of that. But there's other pieces of information that are critical there for their daily management and operations.
Like everything in the technology field, data transfer is critical, and it's the most challenging point too, to get that on a timely basis from the farmer. Taking last year as an example, we were exceptionally dry, going all the way up to V16, V18. We then received some rescue showers. We went from field capacity levels down in below 20 for the first time that I'd ever witnessed in northern Illinois anyway, and then received rescue rains starting at V12 and then again at V16 and then again at VT, but never in a surplus amount. Field capacity levels never really got above 70%, which is in the luxury feeding zone, but we produced corn yields that were just unbelievable, at least in my modern times here. We discovered, I believe, what the baseline low moisture levels needed to be when they needed to happen in order to produce maximum yields. So we were able to hold yields within I would say 10% or better. And our soils up here in northern Illinois, I think you've heard of them, that they do have a tremendous amount of capability to hold water and keep it productive. But the levels that it was done under, the season long rains in my area ranged on the bottom side of 11 inches, which is where I am, and on up to sometimes 15. And then other areas around here seem to have some more higher levels of rains. They were from, let's say, 12 or 14 on up to 15 to 16 inches of rain. But the timeliness and the quality of the rain was just unbelievable that allowed the type of production levels that did happen. I mean, we were very fortunate through here. But all this, like I said, the precision and points in the field is what makes our program work. We're talking about productive rain. We come off our experience of our dry. The previous 7 to 8 years before that, we had been locked in a wet cycle, and more production was lost due to unattended to nitrogen management. We're learning now that those areas, we don't have a lot of fragile soils up here, but the customers that we do have are really catching on to the possibilities of when production was lost because of over-application of irrigation. We're being pulled into that market, and we're developing specific recommendations for irrigation applications also to avoid over-applicate, tied in with the forecast that AWIS provides to avoid saturated grounds and possibility of losing nitrogen and obviously losing production. On the other side of that, again, is the environmental concerns and how we're addressing that. The government obviously is looking over our shoulder. The greenhouse, the CO2 emissions are being devalued. I believe those people in that area have gotten themselves into something they don't understand yet, and they have refocused on the greenhouse gas emissions such as nitrous oxide and many of those things because of the way we apply nitrogen wholesale and maybe one shot. We're finding ways that we can avoid problems. It's not just about adding production. Our soils, along with our genetics, they kind of put us in a zone where we operate production-wise, but it's avoiding the mistakes that occur that we aren't even aware of. That when you see this weather data on a daily basis, it's pretty impactful.
With your clients, they're sharing their data with you so that you can create that custom
planting dates, nitrogen applications, the amounts. Yes. Input.
And also rainfall reports as best possible to better localize the rainfall, which is the biggest driving factor, obviously, is the variability of rainfall across large areas or even small areas. So that's where I think AWIS comes in the best because we quality control that information. We know the density of the rainfall reports and use it with other inputs. Since we have inputs of whether it's radar or actual observations, we like ground truth actual observations to verify reports. So we get as many of those as we can to quality control those. And we also estimate soil temperatures for planting, which we're getting into that time of year. I don't know of anybody else that does that, does it effectively. And we've got a ground truth verification of that over the years to show that our model of soil temperatures is very good. We estimate field capacity that Scott mentioned. We're creating models for that and knowing when, and we do that on a forecast range out to 15 days at least. Could do it further, but the accuracy decreases rapidly. You get beyond 10 days, generally speaking, for timing of rainfall. But we do that to tell the farmer that where the current field capacity is estimated, where it's going to be in the future, so they'll get an idea whether they have a risk of nitrogen loss. Those are other key factors that we need to point out, that we're still in development phase of some of that, but the results, Scott can verify this and talk a little bit more, are encouraging as far as giving them an idea, is now a good time to plant, is now a good time to apply nitrogen to maximize their applications over time, and also give them a future look. If we just use climatology out to harvest time or to full black layer time when everything's developed, give them an idea if they're going to reach that point or not in our modeling for future crop phenological stages and growth stages. And Scott knows, and he can explain again, that certain growth stages are key to when you get your rainfall or even when you apply your nitrogen as far as the crop intake of the corn itself. So we can estimate those time periods and intervals when they'll occur. And that, again, is critical. We don't know anybody else is doing anything like that as far as getting it more on a field with the inputs from the client themselves as far as when they plant it, so we can follow their development of their stage as the corn evolves and then give them key timing of when all these events occur. I mean, we can do other things as far as weather, as far as chemical applications, all as well can kind of tie into that as well. But those are just a few of the key points that they cannot get anywhere else. Anywhere else, it's kind of a canned product, and it's just kind of, this is what we got, this is what you take. They cannot follow their development of their stage for that field, for that crop when it was planted, and the amount of nitrogen is applied to go along with the soil testing that was done to know if there's any inherent nitrogen in the available as well.
It's been nothing but consolidated over the years. That why would anybody want to apply nitrogen if you don't know what you have there for free? Is where it pivots on. And so that's what we do on our side of the nitrogen side. But in the same case on the other end with the data stories, that the case is over south of Kankakee, south of Chicago. At R3, they had a lot of replant from a wet spring, heavy rains early after planting, and then had massive amounts of replant, of which did not occur till the last of May, 1st of June in that area, but still had excellent weather, turned dry, had a field that we had the luxury that looked so great. A seed corn company said that we can't believe how good this field looks. Do you mind if we hand yield check it and see what the possibilities of yields were? What they came up with was 299, I believe, 0.3 bushels. And, crop planted that late, there's no way that could be. Well, they had all kinds of interns in there, and I would trust that because it did look that great. I got to see it. At the beginning of R4, that area again received anywhere from 9 to 12 inches of rain all the way to black layer. Normal black layer, or R5, the final maturity stage, usually lasts between 20 and 30 days. Theirs lasted 58 days because of the cold weather that came on, and then they also had saturated soils for 54 days straight. That yield at 299, estimated at 299, ended up being 203. Is it possible to lose a third of your corn production during that one last growth phase? Yes, it is. Are you aware of that? No. So not only was the corn very poor quality, light in test weight, it was delayed for 20, 30 days. It would not dry down. I'm assuming at the elevators, there was a lot of short tempers that last fall in that area. We've got all kinds of scientific data out there, but we're so immersed in selling more and more and more of things, we tend to forget that what is the science? Stop here. This is why we built this platform. In my farming days, I spent 24 years farming with my father. When my parents passed away, we had to get the estate settled with my 3 other brothers. So I got out of agriculture. I've had this time to breathe. I worked in a local co-op, got to watch other farmers on how they made decisions, and they were unbelievably accurate sometimes. Didn't know why they did what they did. They just kept squeezing the things down or increasing amounts and looked at the results. But for the most part, you got to listen to why people think the way they think. And I had 7 years of being able to do that. I communicated with them, even though I was not their salesman. But I did farm. I signed checks and I endorsed checks from farming. Everything's connected, I guess. What it looked like as a opportunity that had kind of withered on the vine. No, it really was a different opportunity that I took advantage of, and it was instrumental in building what we have built today. That's the kind of the background and how we approach things. It's on a consultant basis. A human's got to be involved because you can't press one final button and give you the answer to this. Farmers, for the most part, know their land very intimately. Yield monitors are adding to that intimacy. They don't understand the cause and effect. We can find the reason why, the most important reason why production is affected on a micro basis throughout the field, but everything is variable, and we recognize that fact, and we build our programs around that.
Talk about the area or region that you're doing this work in, and how do farmers get in touch with you and create a relationship with what you're doing?
You can get a hold of me at scottwt1@gmail.com, and we can talk on the phone or via email. That's my job. I have 2 other partners that are in northeastern Illinois and central Illinois, in the middle of the state, not around Galesburg. I'm in business with also. But I have started a YouTube channel that I'm offloading all this because explaining this is very different from what farmers understand. They obviously know that there's a point of diminishing returns on adding nitrogen. We do an end around that. when we do the lab test, it will tell us what the capability and how much you need is. But the YouTube channel, I'm offloading the educational part for one-on-one sales network, offloading that to YouTube. So hopefully they'll be able to understand what's behind what we do. But again, we are committed to a network. It's not going to be coming from a platform. You enter in your soil type and your organic matter and maybe one or two other things, and it'll give you a nitrogen recommendation. No, this is very specific, and we feel like it'll be more critical that a farmer understand this and adopt this somehow because of the impending regulation that is definitely coming over the hill.
That plus costs right now have certainly been an issue. You know, it is a significant input, and you add to that what some of the prices have been, or some of the challenges just even to get the supplies that you want.
Yes, our tests are good for 4 to 8 corn crops. So whether you use a flip-flop rotation corn, soybean, or continuous corn, the recommendations are good that you're entitled to a recommendation change once per year for the field. But the organic end production is really biologically is very stable. Manure applications can raise that ability to produce its own nitrogen over time. We do quite a bit of work with livestock farms and recognizing, again, how much is free. Your manure application is not, the nitrogen received is not just from the manure itself, but how it affects the microbiology of that manure on into the future. But to make it go backwards, you would have to be a very abusive farmer in order to make those properties go backwards.
That really helps explain what you're doing with Nitrogen Pulse and with AWIS. Carl, anything else you might want to add before we get to the end?
This is a learning experience by merging all these things with the obviously the critical part of the soil testing to know what available nitrogen is there, and then combine that with our weather observations of what's currently ongoing on their local field area, and then the forecast part of it, the predictive part, and to merge all these things together takes a little bit of time, and you got to go over the course. You got to see the dry, wet, warm, cold periods and all during different times of the growing season. So you really need several case studies of this over time to really build confidence in where there may be some weak links. So that's why it takes a little bit of time to develop these things, to kind of go over all the possibilities of what can occur and what time of year and what stage that particular crop is in, the amount of nitrogen is either available or that you've applied. So that's why it's been kind of a learn, if you will, over time philosophy. And that's the way you develop things, the right way, the scientific way. But on the AWIS side, we provide quality weather inputs, whether it's observations or forecast. That's what we're here for, to help Scott kind of reach out to the growers and the work he's doing. And it's ever evolving. It's a dynamic thing, just like weather is. So it will undergo some curveballs here and there, but as technology changes and as the seed industry changes and the chemical parts, so on fertilizer part and recommendations, and of course the greening part of the conserving resources also comes into play. And that will be the big playing factor, too, that will kind of push this forward as we go into the future. So we've learned a lot over the last 5 to 10 years, and we'll continue to learn and develop these things and improve and tweak them to where they're really effective and a good tool for the farmer to utilize to help not only themselves in this challenging world of trying to save pennies and trying to save the environment. So it's a combination of all these things. So you really need somebody out there that knows what's going on, where the sources are coming from, the quality of it. So that's where we come into play.
Yeah, Scott, go ahead. But I was going to say, if there's anything else you want farmers to know we didn't touch on too. So
yes, I did fail to mention that we have a weed emergence prediction page on there too. So we've classified different weed species into 5 different ones and predict when they do emerge. And what that is exposed is there will be huge changes in the future of utilizing especially systemic chemicals to manage our weeds completely different. We have the data to provide going forward, and this would really work great for the drone industry to apply in specific areas of the field where you know their pressure is and you know when it's going to emerge, the day. All of this has been ground truth within 24 hours of when our predictions are. So along with the growth phases of the corn crop, I've not had any fields off any more than 24 hours. The weed prediction model is also indexed by the amount of residue cover. That highly affects the emergence time. I've seen it as high as 40 days. Clean tillage obviously is going to warm up faster than, let's say, a no-till cover crop along with it. Is, like I said, as wide as 40 days in the same area, depending on your residue amount. We're used to doing things a certain way. I'm hoping that farmers, we learn to discover data. I was taught this by Dr. Valero from University of Illinois. He's part of what we do also. He's got another platform that developed that we're underneath. Data is either useful, accurate, or precise. If any of those 3 categories can't be qualified, it's useless. And unfortunately, the previous models that we've been exposed to, a lot of the data is useless. Just qualifying it and understanding where it fits, what's this going to affect in my operation, not just production, but financial, environmental, regulation-wise, it's so connected. Yes.
I should add that you can contact AWIS.com from your browser on our website, and that has some contact information and additional information that we may not have discussed here that would also kind of give them some contact information for those that aren't familiar with this nitrogen pulse. And again, this is not just for nitrogen. I think we can develop a seasonal-wide means for their operational decisions. So from pre-plant to post-harvest even. So that is an ongoing thing that we continue to add new products and new information there that can help them make critical management decisions. So it's something that is evolving, but we have good pieces out there right now that can help them immediately.
Well, thank you guys very much. Carl with AWIS and Scott with Nitrogen Pulse. We've been talking about how you guys are working together in collaboration for the benefit of corn growers. That's the ZimmCast for this week. I hope you enjoyed it, and thank you for listening.
You've been listening to the ZimmCast, the official podcast of AgWired. Check us out at www.agwired.com to find out what's new in agricultural marketing.